Folks, thanks for sticking with us. I know it's that point of the afternoon where we're all getting a little sleepy, especially post-lunch. So again, I'm Kat Gaines. I work at PagerDuty. I manage developer relations there. I've spent about 11 years working there in the space of incident management, reliability. If you know us, that's what we do. If you don't, there are the Cliff Notes, that's what we do. And so because of that time, I have quite a bit of strong perspective on things like incident response, team dynamics, especially how leadership gets involved with that. Both at PagerDuty and beyond, I've been able to see a few examples of that going well, a few examples of it going less well, and opportunities for improvement. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of a detour here to share something about myself. I am an avid hobby baker. I would have brought you all cookies, but I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that was more packing than I wanted to do. So this will have to do for now. But one story around baking and working with that hobby kind of also shaped my thinking about leadership and this particular space. So a couple of years ago, I was visiting one of my best friends who lives in a different state, and I really love to cook for people when I visit, just to say thank you, especially if they're letting me stay in their house. And while I was making them dinner, she offered to help. And I responded with what I was pretty sure was a loving, absolutely not, please stay out of my way. I think I said it in that tone though, and I tend to run a little bit blunt in general. So a few months later, we were chatting, and she said, you know, that time that you were over at my house, you got really snippy in the kitchen. I was like, oh, snippy. That's not the word I want to hear to describe myself. So I thought about it a little bit. I reflected, and I had kind of a little bit of a light bulb moment around why I might have been that way or perceived that way. Reason number one, my family is German, and so we sound very blunt and scary all the time. Reason number two, though, is that my reaction really came from past experiences of being micromanaged in the kitchen by other people. I used to work in the restaurant industry. My mom did that to me a lot when I was a kid. So I had some experiences that made cooking stressful and frustrating when collaborating with others, and I guess I was still hanging on to that many, many years later. So I just want a quick show of hands of who has had some experience, whether it's in a hobby or in a kitchen or at work, where someone has been a little over-involved, whether it's a superior or a peer, and that has made things more difficult for you. Yeah, that's what I thought. Literally everyone raised their hand. You're going to. That happens to all of us, and we also all are really prone to accidentally doing it, even when we have the best intentions. So that for me changed how I'm approaching teamwork, both in and out of the kitchen and at work. And that is, believe it or not, I'm getting back there, directly relevant to how we handle incident response. So for the sake of time, these definitions up here, we're not going to go over them in too much detail, but I've left them here just in case. This is how we define an incident, a major incident, and incident response at PagerDuty. Because this is our core space, this is our bread and butter, I would say this is a great place for you to start from if you don't have clear definitions in your organization, but your mileage might vary. This is what works for us. Something else may work for you. The thing is, incident response at its core is about collaborating, just like working with someone in a kitchen. And when you're in one of these moments, the state of being in incident response can feel really intense. You're dealing with quite a lot going on all at the same time, and everything may not always go to plan. Whoa, we went way forward. Okay, we're gonna back up just a little. Nice preview. Okay, so everything not always going to plan. That's where we were. These are two pies I made for family Thanksgiving one year, and you can see that top pie crust looks pretty darn bad. The tart on the bottom is doing okay. That top pie crust did not go to plan. That was not what I was hoping for. We still ate it. It still tasted fine. But when you're in incident response, everything is, again, not going to plan. Something might be a little bit broken, like that top crust. Everyone is at least a little bit panicked, even if they're not showing it externally. I brought that pie to Thanksgiving, and I just grinned through it, even though I was beating myself up inside. And we're all desperate to return to normal operations. As leaders, we feel those responsibilities and that panic pretty acutely, and we're also the ones who have to just grin and bear it. And our instinct to jump in and fix everything can be really overwhelming in that moment. It's really tempting as a leader to react to crisis. We feel that responsibility, we definitely are in that panic category, and we know that if everything falls apart, we're going to be held responsible more than anyone on our team. The thing is, if you're reacting to that panic, it means just kind of taking over for a lot of folks. If I want it done right, I'll do it myself, right? But if you give in to this reaction, you really do risk turning your team into people who snip at their coworkers at best, who feel like you don't trust them because you're micromanaging them. And incident response is a really good opportunity to upset your team a lot, or to build a really solid foundation of mutual trust where they know that you've got their back and they can have yours as well. So in these moments, you have to remember a few things. You hired your team because they're good at what they do. That is exactly why you hired each person there, because you trust them and because you want to empower them. You can't be everywhere at once, and nor should you try to be. You also don't control when major incidents strike. If you're a leader, you might be in meetings, you're going to be in meetings. You're going to be focusing on other time-sensitive work. You don't have the capacity to, and you can't try to be a hero. You need to know when to step in and also when to step back. Stepping in looks good when the very small list of things on this slide are happening. When a member of your team very specifically requests that you step in, they say, hey boss, I need you, please help. If you see a major mistake being made, there's a little asterisk next to that one, we'll get to it. Or if it's otherwise called for in your incident response protocol. We'll talk about that a little bit more later too. Stepping back has to happen. There are 5 bullets there, but really just one time at all other times. And yes, really. That list of when you should step in, again, it's really short. It has some maybes. The reason for this is that definitions and process matter. I'm going to say that again. Definitions and process are the most important thing in making sure you have healthy incident response. You can't decide, for example, that a misplaced comma in an external communication is a major mistake during incident response. It's just the wrong moment to be that petty. But boy, wouldn't it be tempting to do that if you had no guardrails at all around what does and does not constitute a mistake? It might not sound that way to you, but in the moment, again, we're all anxious, we're panicky, we're a little crazy. I've seen people do it. So this is why building that clearly defined process is so important. If you have a playbook, you can stick to that playbook. If not, anyone can just go off the rails and decide new rules in the moment, especially leaders who love doing that. And those rules will be things that no one else has agreed to, things like where they should butt in. The other reason why major mistake has that asterisk next to it is because even as a leader, correcting that mistake in the moment, even if it's totally valid, might not be your individual job. It's the industry standard to appoint an incident commander to run the call once an incident kicks off. And something we coach from the PagerDuty perspective is that this person is the single authority on decisions made during the call, regardless of their standing in the organization. This means usually that the decisions your team is making during incident response are ones that are being discussed with that incident commander, and they should be treated as the right ones by default. They've been made according to the process, and this level of absolute authority should provide clarity during the incident where you don't have time for additional confusion. So let's talk about a phenomenon we like to call the executive swoop and poop. That's really what we call it. It is when someone, usually again a leader, often an executive, that's why that's the first word there, interrupts an incident call and starts directing things without being asked to. They come in, they say, I know the answer, you do this, you do that. Why don't we have this information? And they interrupt the actual troubleshooting and response happening. So we teach our incident commanders and folks who ask us for training on this one neat trick, which is, hey, CEO, would you like to just take command of the call? That's a scary question, often, for them. At least it should be, and it should be pretty simple but effective. Best case scenario, they're going to back off and realize that they're doing way too much in that moment and they need to restore the order. Or they might just take full responsibility. They might say, yeah, Kat, I want to take command of this call. Step aside, I've got this. Either way, clarity is restored, and if they go for that second option, they will probably learn from it, or your organization will, at best. The point here is that if your team is acting in any incident response role, you have to develop comfort, and you have to coach your upper leaders as well to develop comfort with giving your team members authority in that role. Again, they're in charge of a specific role. You've said in your process that they're in charge of this moment at this specific point in time. It's their whole job right now. So if you're, again, in a QBR meeting or some additional budget doc or some other management layer of hell, even if incident response might sound more fun, you can step back out of it. The work you're doing as leader is mission critical, and so is the work your team is doing to run the incident. You don't need the visibility of having played the hero. You have that prominent voice, and it's your job to empower your team to do that instead. So we might be set on the why for staying out of your team's way, and we talked about one how, but we still need to help your team feel empowered to act as authority and to fend off the leaders who aren't yet as convinced as you are. Again, you should be coaching upward and outward with your other leaders, but you also need to give your team the authority to say no to those people. To help you and others develop comfort with that, communication is one of the key pieces. So let's talk a little bit about how that happens. I have a whole separate talk actually on communications during incidents going even deeper, but we're going to talk some Cliff's notes here. This is PagerDuty's chart of basic roles of incident response. Again, this is what we do. Yours might look a little different. If you want to use this as a jumping off point, it's a great place to start. But it is always critical that you have some kind of communications lead. A lot of people take this person from customer support or other customer-facing roles because they already know how to talk to those customers, and they usually serve a pretty great bridge between your engineering team and your customers to explain what's going on, especially in those moments where coming up with that language might not be natural for everyone else. But it can really be anyone. You also want to make sure an internal liaison, you'll see that second orange bar, is in place too. That can also be anyone. They're going to be responsible for managing communication during the incident internally, so they're, again, the authority on what we're communicating. They've talked with the incident commander, they've hopefully gotten all of your messaging approved by that person, they've fact-checked it with your subject matter experts to make sure that it's correct, and so they should be the person the organization trusts to say, cool, this is what's going on, and this is how we communicate it externally. Something that I think every leader I've met falls very, very prey to, and why they jump into incidents in this way, is that thing that appeared on the screen just now in a chaotic manner, because that's all it does, is so chaos, anxiety. They're anxious, again, about the impact on the business. Should this incident continue and have more impact? About how they might be held responsible, about public image. Some of them have to talk to media about it. That's scary. I don't want to do that. Most of you probably don't either. And that's fair. They'll feel it a lot if things go sideways. I feel like living with anxiety my whole life, I have a little bit of expertise in it, and if I've learned anything in that time, it's that calming it happens best when you confront it with the facts. It'll lie to you, it's also lying to your executives, and when you have a toolkit to remind anyone falling prey to this major downfall of those facts and fill in any gaps of your knowledge, things become a lot easier, a lot faster. So a crucial piece of that toolkit, we touched on this earlier, but it's stakeholder internal communication. Your entire leadership team and others have to know where they should go to get information when something is happening. Half of those executive swoop and poops that we hear often are people just coming in and saying, what's going on? I need an update. They shouldn't have to do that, literally ever. Simply not knowing what's going on is one of those key reasons why they interrupt, and it's amazing how effective giving them that information can be to help them just kind of stay in their corner and do their thing. So just give them a destination. It can be anything that works for your org. It can be a Slack channel, it can be an internal status page of some kind. Tools like PagerDuty have features for stakeholder notifications specifically to keep these folks up to date. But the point here is it doesn't really matter what you use, however you do it, make sure that defined place to find information during incidents exists and that it's widely known. Don't just make it and then not tell anyone about it. It doesn't work so well that way, so you have to train your whole organization on it. And that way you can proactively provide that situational awareness and that transparency. That way no one's going to be caught off guard and no one's going to feel the need, again, in that panic response that's bubbling up in them to start directing an incident call without ever being asked to. You'll want to include some key information in these updates too, because if you miss these pieces, you will definitely still get those folks coming in, interrupting call, asking for this information. So make sure you hit at least these key points. Again, for your organization, you might have more that you want to include, but these are the basics as I see it. Things like when it began, brief description of any services impacted by the incident, whether those are technical facing or whether that's a business facing service. If you know the the impact an incident is having on customers, say it. Also, if you don't know it, say it so that everyone knows that, okay, we're still figuring that out. Also, hot tip, ask your experts who talk to customers if they've heard about the symptoms that those customers are experiencing yet. Customer support, anyone in your field, your sales teams, they'll have some idea probably because their accounts will probably be screaming by this point. Where to find more information, again, we just talked about that, make sure they know where to go. The location of any status pages, how to respond when a customer is asking you for more details. This piece is important because it's going to be a little bit different depending on your role. Your executive team may have a different brief of communications than, for example, your customer support organization, who is going to have some more focused how-to or workarounds or just what to expect when someone asks what's going on. So make sure that those folks all have the information they need, again, however that's structured in your incident process. And then how often to expect updates. That's also really crucial. My key tip here is be very intentional about how often to expect updates. Try to be as honest about it as possible. And if you mess up, if you say, hey, we're gonna have an update in 20 minutes, and then 20 minutes you're like, oh man, I have nothing new, nothing has changed at all, then say something to that effect. Again, this is internal, so you can be brutally honest with your internal stakeholders. If you get to the point where you're publishing that externally, you have to be a little bit more manicured about that communication, but you still want to be as honest as possible, and you want to stick to your promises to hold at least that baseline of trust, both with your peers and your customers. If an incident is severe or long-running enough, again, touching on that customer piece, your communication staff is likely also going to be running some external comms. Wherever those happen is likely somewhere that you are already used to looking for information, or anyone who's been involved in incidents in your org is used to. But even when those are present, it's still really important to keep those internal comms going. That's another failure point I see, that people just sometimes drop the internal communication once there's an external status page update or something else that people can follow. Those internal communications serve a function still. They provide consistency. They eliminate any doubt with anyone that there might be additional information about the incident that you're not ready to communicate with customers, but employees have to go search for themselves. If you're still communicating with them, they know that they're getting every single thing that you have in the moment. They know where to look, they know who is in charge, and they know that unless they're directly involved, again, in that incident resolution in some way, they don't need to jump in. They can just stay put. So just a quick recap of our do's and don'ts. You want to express gratitude even when you have to ask someone to give you space. That's an important piece. Trusting your team in their ability and giving them the autonomy they need to handle those tasks, especially in those critical incident roles. Relying on those clearly defined incident process and protocol to guide actions and decision. Maintaining calm and authority, making sure that in those high-stress situations that you're still able to firmly say, hey, here's who has this, and no, I don't need your help, thank you very much. Keep providing that information proactively. Again, don't wait until the last minute, don't wait until you've run out of time. And then the things you want to avoid, don't micromanage your team, they've got this. And if the process has been defined, they should be following it. Acting from anxiety, just stopping, and especially if you have that urge as a leader to jump in, asking if you know that you're really needed or that you'll contribute something useful. From the individual contributor piece, not leaving anyone in the dark. From the manager piece, again, not underestimating your team. And then you might want to buy your team some cookies later, especially if those first couple slides made you hungry. There are a couple places where you can go learn quite a lot more on this. So I put both URLs and QR codes in here just for flexibility, but that top, yes, the top QR code is one of our operations guides. My team publishes these on just industry best practices from what we've learned from our customers over the years. And that top one goes to, I believe, the stakeholder operations guide, but I would also recommend response.pagerduty.com. You can find them all if you just search PagerDuty operations guides, but that QR code is a quick shortcut. If you want to connect with me, if you want to chat more about this later, that bottom QR code is my LinkedIn. Also, I'm just /CatGames on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find. Me and my team are always happy to partner with your orgs, talk more about these, and just chat about anything that might be bothering you in this area. And then I have just one last call to action, a third QR code. Our user community, if you want to continue the conversation, if you want to talk to other people about how they do these things, go sign up there. There are a lot of folks there just kind of hanging out and talking about partially PagerDuty product, but also a lot of this cultural process and making things work. And it's a good place to just bounce ideas off of people if you're struggling with something like this in your org, or if you have maybe an overeager leader who needs a little bit of help toning it down. And that is it for now.